Feeling as if your onboarding process isn't where it needs to be? Stay tuned for a wealth of information to help you recruit highly engaged employees that will contribute to your workplace culture in a positive manner. Get ready for another educational episode on the Fitness Business Podcast. Holy cow, Larry Levine's episode, Selling from the Heart, is racking up the downloads. Thank you for making show number 476 so popular. I knew when Larry was on the show that this episode was outstanding, and you just solidified it for me. Awesome. Head to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com if you want to take a listen to find out what all the fuss is about. Hi, I'm your host, Dori Nugent, and I welcome Chad Bryant to my show today. Chad is the owner of CWB Workplace Culture Consulting Company, as well as the fitness director at Raintree Athletic Club. Chad is here today to express how important the first 30 days are to cultivate an authentic relationship with your new hires so they can soar. I know you're anxious for me to get started with today's show, but first I need to give some love to Hapana for being an amazing partner to the Fitness Business Podcast.
This podcast is brought to you by Hapana. Hapana is a cutting-edge membership management solution prioritizing insane engagement. Hapana puts your brand first so you can facilitate deep, meaningful connections with clients and members to book, pay, consume content, and build community. Hapana partners with fitness brands in both the boutique and big box segments that want to drive efficient operations and maximum engagement with clients and members. And they do this by providing direct world-class support with a passionate team who cares about your success. To see how you can transform your brand, go to Hapana.com and ask for a demonstration. Hapana, engineered for engagement.
Hapana, thank you. And if you are looking for cutting-edge fitness software, look no further than www.hapana.com.
Get your pen ready now for MyZone's FitBizspiration.
What are your top 3 suggestions to start onboarding new staff so they fly like an eagle and not waddle like a duck?
Number 1 would be the screening process. So identify candidates that are people smart. And when I say people smart, I mean that they make appropriate eye contact, they smile. Does their attitude reflect your club culture? And then do they demonstrate the appropriate competency for the position they're applying for? So that would be number 1. Number 2 would be the first interview. Identify candidates that are coachable. So we're looking for humility, a growth mindset, and an achievement mentality. So this would be an opportunity to ask potentially stressful questions to see if the candidate responds with defensiveness, which means they're not going to be very coachable and they probably don't have growth mindset. Or do they respond with humility, which means they're open to feedback, they're open to growth, and they're going to be much more coachable. And then the third and last one would be the first day of onboarding. It should be built around cultivating a personal, authentic relationship. Save the HR paperwork for day number 2. That day number 1, get to know the person, explain your company, what it values, and how they fit in the organization.
Jason Stolwell's Thinking Ahead show is coming next week. Mark your calendars and spend 30 minutes with Jason and his guests.
On our very next Fitness Business Podcast, The Thinking Ahead Show, we welcome 3 expert guests from within the tech industry to discuss the potential impacts of varying technologies that include AR, VR, and AI to help you, the fitness business owner and operator, stay ahead of the trends and not just following them.
Professional facilitation with a group of non-competing owners to stay ahead of the industry curve is the USP of Rex Roundtables. To find your local roundtable, go to rexroundtables.com. That's rexroundtables.com.
Let's transition into this week's interview with Chad Bryant. Chad Bryant is joining me today on the Fitness Business Podcast. Chad is the fitness director at Raintree Athletic Club, but he is also the owner of CWB Workplace Culture. Now you might be like, what is that? Well, that is where they support club owners who are interested in creating a positive, productive workplace culture. Chad, that's amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for coming on today and spending time with our FBP family.
Thanks for having me.
So I can't wait to hear more about, this workplace culture company that you have. I think it's really cool. But before we get into that, tell me about your role at Raintree Athletic Club, which is located in Colorado.
Mm-hmm. So I have two main roles here. The first would be as the fitness director. So I support the managers of our non-dues revenue generating departments. So that'd be specifically aquatics and group fitness. And then I directly oversee our sports programs, massage therapy departments, small group training, and then personal training. And then my second role, which you alluded to, would be supporting with the workplace culture. So that would be our screening and hiring systems, onboarding of new team members, conflict management trainings, drama in the workplace, conscious communication, and then our leadership training for all new managers.
That sounds like a lot of hats. Tell me about how big is your club or maybe your membership base?
Sure. Yeah. So we'd be considered a big box facility, multi-use. So about 50,000 square feet, give or take 10,000 square feet. I don't remember quite the square footage. So we have a daycare, group fitness facilities, aquatics, like I had mentioned. Our main demographic is probably going to be families, both young and more mature families. We have a large student population. And when I say students, I'm talking mostly about high school students. And then a lot of our members are fairly engaged in the club. So we're looking at between 4,000 and 8,000 members.
Wow. So out of all of your duties that you perform, do you have a favorite one?
Yeah, my passion is our workplace culture, which is just a fancy way of saying the people, the team. I really enjoy working with the team and building those authentic relationships.
Did you tell me before we started recording that came first and then the fitness director job came?
So sort of. So when I first was onboarded here at Raintree, the owner, Martin Johns, and I spoke quite at length about workplace culture and the importance of it. And, the importance of having a highly engaged team as opposed to a disengaged team and the benefits of that. And he and I shared a lot of the same views in regards to why a health club is important, why fitness is important. And so collectively with those conversations, and then with my background in personal training and management and sales, we kind of evolved into the fitness director role in addition to, supporting with the workplace culture.
All right. Well, listen, this is why you're on the podcast today as our industry expert. You're going to talk a lot about, how the first 30 days can really make a new employee like soar and fly. What do you think in order to do this? What do you think the key is to building a high performance team?
So when I think of a high performing team, it's helpful for me to first define what that means and then understand what a high performing team means. So that would be the employees, or like in our language, we refer to employees as team members. So for the rest of the podcast, I'll refer to employees as team members. So the team members all believe the same thing, and they're all unified in that belief system, and that they're thoroughly engaged in the club, and then they work together as a cohesive unit. So that would be what I think of when we say a high-performing team. So as an operator or a manager, our job is to define, know, and understand what our company's belief system is, and then base everything on that. And so we need to know who we are, why we exist, and what function we serve in the industry. And what this does is provide organizational clarity, and it's the basis of the belief system. So when I talk about a club's belief system, I feel like that sometimes can be a bit ambiguous or amorphous. But what I'm talking about is defining your club's belief system through a purpose statement or defined values or a mission statement or a vision, something like that. And usually, at least in my experience, these words tend to just hang on a poster and decorate the HR office. they're misunderstood or misrepresented. But research has shown that companies that are purpose or mission driven, those are not only the companies that millennials and Gen Zers want to work for, but they also provide direction to team members and they aid in decision making. And then most importantly, potentially, those companies know who they are and what they stand for. And then when a company knows who they are and what they stand for, they know what their belief system is. And it makes it easier for them to attract and identify candidates that believe in the same thing. So it's kind of cheesy, and I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up, but the Robin Hood movie that stars Kevin Costner that came out in the early 90s, he says something in that movie that I feel like it really pertains to this, actually. So he says that one free man defending his home is more powerful than 10 hired soldiers. And the reason why I think that's relevant in this discussion is I'd rather have one highly engaged team member who believes in our company and what we stand for. And that person is going to be more powerful than 10 warm bodies who show up just for a paycheck. So defining your company's belief system would be step one in building that high-performing team.
So you talk about the highly engaged person, and we all want to think that everybody we hire is going to be that highly engaged person, but that doesn't happen. With your experience, how does a gym owner find that highly engaged person?
Sure. So similar to the high-performing team, how we define that, I think that it's worthwhile to sort of define what we mean when we say a highly engaged person or just an engaged person. So there are different types of engagement, and engagement itself simply means the degree to which a team member is invested in their job. So that's what engagement means, the degree to which a team member is invested in their job. So we have the highly engaged. That's the person that is going to do whatever they need to do to achieve the type of success they need to achieve in the organization. They have authentic, deep-seated relationships with other people on the team. They show up for company events, things like that. That's the highly engaged person. That's the person we want. And then there is the disengaged. The disengaged person will show up, do the bare minimum, and then they'll clock out and leave at the end of the day. There's nothing inherently wrong with that if that's the type of person you want. So that'd be the disengaged person. They come in, they do the bare minimum. They don't really care if the company succeeds or not. And then the third and the last type, which is the most devastating to any organization, regardless of industry, is the actively disengaged employee. Now, the actively disengaged employee is the person that hates their employer. They don't like their job, and they're going to talk to their colleagues about what sucks about the company. They're going to talk to their friends and family. They're going to talk to the members outside in the community or within the club about why that place is awful. So you have the highly engaged, you have the disengaged, and then you have the actively disengaged. So we're looking for the highly engaged. So back to your question about, okay, how do we find that highly engaged person? Once you have your company's belief system in place via a purpose or mission or values, the next step would be the screening and hiring system. So the goal with this would be to identify the candidates who share the same beliefs and characteristics that your company values. So as guardians of the gate, we get to decide who joins the team and who doesn't. And so it's important that that hiring system is designed to flush out and identify the candidates that we want. And so right now would be a good time. I should note that it's also equally as important to identify the candidates that aren't a right fit. So those are the candidates whose belief systems aren't in alignment with the club. So yeah, going back to the highly engaged person, everything is an interview, and it should start with the application process all the way through the onboarding process. So the first step in finding a highly engaged person is to identify the character traits that your club values, build your screening and interview system around questions that'll help you identify those characteristics. In addition to those characteristics that we want to know if that team members' attitudes and actions are in alignment with what we're looking for. So human beings reflect what they believe through their attitudes and actions. So in order to assess a candidate's belief system is in alignment with our clubs, we need to assess their attitude. So we can do this by asking questions about the candidate's life experiences. So for example, if we're looking for somebody who is hungry and driven, let's say, and they'll do whatever they need to do to have the type of success they want in life, we can build an entire interview around those questions to help us find that quality. So for instance, we could ask something like, if you could do any career, what would it be and why? And then we hear their answer. And the follow-up question might sound like, all right, so what are the things that you're doing to achieve this? And the responses to those questions are going to tell us if they're the candidate that we're looking for. And so two sort of different responses that could come out of those questions. Someone might say that they'd like to be, let's say, a commercial pilot. And then we can ask them, what are they doing to accomplish that? If they say, well, I'm here interviewing for this job so I can save money, go to school, and get my pilot's license, I could make the argument, okay, this person is hungry, they're driven, and they're doing whatever it takes to get their pilot's license, to have the success they want. Conversely, if they said, well, I can't become a pilot because I don't have my pilot's license, and I need to go to school for that, and I'm not able to do that for whatever reason, I might just wonder, as an employer, how much effort are they willing to put forth when they face an on-the-job obstacle? Or how likely are they going to be to complete a potentially difficult task? And so questions like these the intention is not to pass judgment on someone, because each of us have different set of life circumstances that inevitably is going to make it difficult or challenging for us to accomplish a goal. This is merely a way of discerning whether or not this person's belief system is in alignment with what we're looking for.
How quickly, Chad, would you say it takes you to realize that their belief system is in alignment with your club's culture? I mean, after you hire somebody, how quickly can you see that?
Well, I'll answer that two ways. So one, our interview's in 20 minutes. So typically we can sort of identify, at least we think we've identified, if somebody's a good candidate within the first 20 minutes. And then within the first 30 days, we're going to have a pretty good idea if that person is the right fit.
Chad, now once you make an offer, right, to the employee, what is your onboarding process like?
So Patrick Lencioni, who's one of my favorite authors, he has a concept called healthy and smart as it relates to business. So essentially, when he says smart, he's referring to the systems, processes, and policies of a business. And then healthy refers to the company culture, the leadership, the people, and relationships. So traditionally on an employee's first day of work, we tend to go straight to the SMART policies, which would be like the HR paperwork. And then briefly mention, if at all, that company's purpose or mission or values. It's kind of skipped right over that part. So this communicates to that new hire that the SMART policies, systems, procedures takes priority over the people or over the company culture. And since the company culture is all about team, we choose to prioritize the health first. So the health being the people. So on day one, instead of doing the traditional HR paperwork, we will explain to that new team member the company's history, how we came to be, what we believe, what we value, and how that person is now part of our lineage, and why that person was handpicked out of a pool of applicants for a very important role in the organization. And then day two is when we can do all the HR paperwork and training on SMART policies and systems.
How do you measure the success of all of this training during the onboarding process?
So at the end of the day, we look at the bottom line. So we track our turnover, we look at our member retention, and our online reviews. Harvard Business Review did a study a few years back, and there are hundreds of studies like this online. They found that in businesses with highly engaged teams, profitability increased by 21%, sales productivity by 20%, and output quality by 40%. And output quality is essentially just how well somebody does their job. So yeah, the answer to that would be, our bottom line, and we know if we're healthy or not.
Chad, this has been so great. Thank you so much for helping all of our FVP family out there. I know so many of our owners, our GMs, our department heads that have to hire, they ask us all the time for shows just on, hiring processes, onboarding processes. So thank you so much for coming on. Now, listen, before we end, do you have anything else that you would like to share with our FVP family?
I would just like to mention and recognize Martin Johns. He was a former Olympic athlete, and so he competed at the highest level in regards to athletics. And he's also the owner of Raintree Athletic Club, which is a club that I would consider performs at a high level. He saw the value of having a healthy workplace culture, and so he chose to invest in it. And because of that, we have a high-performing team. So anyone who's listening today, if you're interested in doing any of this work, please reach out. As mentioned earlier, I operate a consulting business called CWB Workplace Culture, and we work primarily in the fitness industry, and we create custom work culture frameworks for health clubs. This work is my life's passion, and so I would love to work with anybody who's interested in this. Thanks so much for having me on.
I just love Chad's enthusiasm for the success of new hires, and I appreciate him sharing his strategy on today's show. Chad Bryant is more than happy to field any follow-up questions. Please head to our show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com for Chad's contact information. Subscribe to the show notes while you're there at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. And if you already did subscribe, head to your email as they will be waiting for you.
G'day, it's JT here. And I was talking to Blair McCaney, the CEO of one of our sponsors, MX Metrics, the other day. And I gave him a hard time about his company's tagline, defeating mediocrity. By definition, that means he's excluding the majority of the market. But Blair just wouldn't budge. He only wants to work with operators who want to punch mediocrity in the face, really smash it. So I've talked to a few of his customers, like Joe Shirelli from Gainesville Health and Fitness, and yeah, it's for real. While Joe is a nice guy, he isn't satisfied with mediocrity either. He's crushing it as well. So I'm still dubious about selling only to operators who want to defeat mediocrity. But if this resonates with you, I reckon you should check them out. Go to mxmetrics.com. But remember, only if you're interested in smashing mediocrity.
Next week, Jason Stowell takes over as the host. He will bring you his quarterly show, Thinking Ahead. Jason always does a great job, so I'm sure it will be an amazing show. Make sure you tune in. Subscribe to the show is the easiest and quickest way to get to the Fitness Business Podcast. So subscribe at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. See you in 2 weeks. Thank you to our founding partner, Active Management, our partners, Hapana, MyZone, Warrior Instructor Academy, and Body Map. I'd also like to thank our advertisers, Rex Roundtables, and MX Metrics. We believe what you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but woven into the lives of others.